what kind of bacteria, right? Okay, so the cell theory states that all living things on this planet that we know about so far are made up of cells. It is the smallest unit of life, okay? And that every new... Oh, I'm so popular. Holy crap. All new cells come from pre-existing cells, okay? So cells don't spontaneously generate. All the old books used to have stories about, you know, way back when, before the cell theory and before the germ theory, right? People thought you got sick because you were bad, right? If you had a cold, it's because you were bad and you sinned and you need to go to church, okay? Not because a virus jammed itself up your nose, okay? So spontaneous generation was sort of the same idea. Cells just appeared out of nowhere. They were just created. And so because mice were found a lot of times in old barns where there's, you know, a bunch of rags and dirty shirts and stuff, that if you left dirty laundry on the floor, mice could spontaneously generate from that. Okay? Because a lot of times you'd go somewhere where there's a bunch of shit on the floor and you pick it up, oh, there's mice. Okay? That's spontaneous generation. Okay? And that maggots are produced from meat. Right? If you leave a big old chunk of ground beef on the counter, you come back 3 days later, there'll be maggots in it. And so they assume that meant the maggots came from the meat. The meat created them. They spontaneously generated from the meat. It wasn't a fly that came and laid eggs that we know now, and then the little larva started growing. Right? So cells come from pre-existing cells. It seems silly now, but this was revolutionary. Okay? And that all living things are made of cells. So anything that is not a cell, we consider dead or not alive. So what would be, do you guys know of an example of something that's not a cell? A rock. Yes, that's good. What about something that seems like it could be alive but isn't a cell? What about what I just said might get jammed up your nose? A virus, right? Viruses reproduce themselves really well, but they're not a cell because all a virus is some genetic material like DNA or RNA and some proteins to hold it, right? That's it. A virus cannot do anything if it's not inside a cell. So if you have you could hold a whole handful 80 kajillion billion particles of influenza virus in your hand, and nothing will happen. They just sit there doing nothing. They can't make you sick. They can't do anything unless they sneak into a cut on your hand and get into your cells and use your cells to replicate themselves. Okay? They cannot replicate themselves alone. They need to be in your cell. They actually steal your enzymes and all your machinery and the energy that you've stored from the donut you ate at breakfast to reproduce themselves. On their own, they can't do shit. So they're not considered alive. Okay? They need to steal life from a cell. So there's other little weirdo germy things like that that are not considered alive because they cannot reproduce on their own, right? So the definition of life is sort of being able to reproduce without help, okay? And that doesn't mean if somebody is infertile that they're not alive. What about somebody who can't have a baby? Are they not alive? No, because we can as a species, as an individual, one cell might get all messed up and not be able to divide. But they can. It's not an organism that cannot reproduce itself, right? Okay, so cells come in many shapes and sizes and perform various functions. Fascinating. Oh, here's some. Okay. Oh, doesn't that look good? There's our, now, don't make a sandwich out of that, okay? Because that is actually a loaf of bread. It's hardly recognizable. Okay, so we can think about single-celled organisms, right? So diatoms and other weirdo oceanographic cells, those guys actually have, they collect silica, which is like a crystal-y type thing from the water, and they coat it on the outside of their cell. So they're actually like little crispy, they look like little grains of sand, okay? But they're actually a living organism. Usually, if they wash up, they're dead, right? They're usually out floating around the ocean when they're alive, okay? An amoeba is a single-celled eukaryotic cell, right? That's pond scum. A bacteria is a single cell, and that is considered a prokaryote. We'll talk about the difference between eukaryotes and prokaryotes in a minute. And then, you know, our regular cells like muscle cells or skin cells or so forth, right? If we look at plants, the plants do have a cell wall because if you think about plants, plant bodies, they don't have a skeleton, right? So in order for plants to become something other than just a pile of mush, like that slime mold, they have to have some way of having structure. And so cell walls are thick, and they provide that structure. Okay? Whereas we don't need that kind of structure because we have bones, right, that our muscles are attached to. If you deboned yourself, you'd be a little pile, right? You wouldn't be able to stand up tall like a tree, right? You'd just be this little pile of nothing, right? Think about, what about like a lobster or a crab? Right? They don't have a cell wall, but they build a skeleton on the outside, right? That thick, the chitin, the shell, right? That's their skeleton. Okay, but plants don't have anything like that, and so they have to build this thick cell wall to make sure they can have some shape. Okay, and then all the fungus. I love the fungus. Okay. So the two main different types of cells on this planet, they're either considered eukaryotic or prokaryotic. Okay? The prokaryotic guys essentially are a cell membrane. They usually have a cell wall, and they have all their DNA and all the stuff inside them just in that one little membrane, like a little bag. Okay? So they don't separate anything internally. It's all just kind of washing around in there. In eukaryotes, we have not only the outside cell membrane, but little packages inside the cell to help hold stuff in different places. Okay? So that we can move proteins around and energy around and sugars around sort of in a complex, organized way. In prokaryotes, like bacteria, so bacteria and prokaryotes, that's going to be the example of that group, right? The stuff inside the cell kind of all has to diffuse around and just find its way places. There's no real complicated architecture in there. So they have to be pretty darn small. Otherwise, the site of where they're using sugar to build energy, that energy molecule can't get where it needs to go if that cell is very big. So the fact that there's no organized inside little vesicles or bags in a bacteria keeps them small. They cannot get any bigger, right? It limits the size a bacteria can be. Because otherwise, he can't move stuff around and function as a cell. So bacteria are teeny, teeny, tiny, microscopic. So in the pictures we looked at here, right, excuse me, these are way more magnified than a muscle cell, okay? If we were going to look at, we'll do an example. If this is one plant cell, right, a bacteria would be a black dot. That's how small it would be compared to a plant cell, okay? Not barely visible under the microscope to see this, right? It would just look like a little black dot. It would definitely not look like something like that. So they're super teeny, teeny, tiny because they have to be, because they don't have any complex inner workings to send crap around, okay? So that keeps them that microscopic and small. And so then here's our little pictures, right? There are some common structures that all cells on this planet have. One is that cell membrane. There has to be something to hold all the stuff inside. Okay? And they're very similar. The cell membrane of a eukaryotic cell is very similar to the cell membrane of a prokaryotic cell. Okay? Suggesting that these cells had a common ancestor of one cell type and have diverged in the last 3.5 billion years. Okay, so the membrane is just the thing that's around the outside that holds everything in. They both have cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is just liquid inside that stupid bag. Okay, cyto means cell, plasm means goo, means liquid. Okay, that's like if you go to donate blood and they want the blood plasma, that's just the liquid of your blood. So that's all plasm means. Okay, they both have ribosomes. Ribosomes are the site of protein synthesis. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. And they both have genetic material. They both have DNA as their genetic material. DNA between prokaryotics and eukaryotes is identical in structure and function. Again, suggesting a common ancestor that had DNA that led to everything that exists on this planet now. Okay? So cell membrane, cytoplasm, ribosomes, and DNA, the genetic material, the instructions for what that cell is and what it's going to do, all cells have. Okay? And all cells on this planet, those structures are incredibly similar to each other. Way more similar than by coincidence could make it. Okay? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. What else? Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the cell membrane, just so you guys understand it. I'm not going to ask you the super picky details about this stuff like I would ask the biology majors. Okay, but all cells, whether they're bacteria, plant, animal, fungus, whatever, any cell that exists on this planet that we know of, right, has a cell membrane. We'll talk about what phospholipid bilayer means. There's proteins in it. It's the boundary of all cells, holds the stuff in. Okay? So it's the boundary between the environment out there and what's inside, or what's in the cytoplasm. Okay? And the cytoplasm is described as a gelatinous aqueous interior of all cells. Right? The goo that's in your cells. Lots of water, right? So when somebody says, human beings are 90% water, or whatever, I don't even know what the percentage is, but a lot of water. Yeah, it's because most of our cells is in this aqueous, just meaning water, right? The inside of every cell is water. There's a bunch of crap in there too, right? But the majority of us is water held in by these membranes. So that's all we are. Bags of water all put together. Okay, so here's a really complicated picture of what a cell membrane looks like. Again, I'm not going to ask you all the picky details. It's good for you to understand what this looks like and how it works, because when we talk about drugs, any kind of drugs, good drugs, bad drugs, over-the-counter drugs, illegal drugs, it's all about how they cross into your cells, right? Alcohol, ooh, that just fires right through those membranes. Goes right through the wall of your stomach, right into your bloodstream. Woo! Okay, sorry, that was evil. Okay, so the phospholipid bilayer is fats, little pieces of fat, right, that sort of face each other. So the fatty part is on the inside of the membrane, and then this outer, the balls that you see out there in the outer side are something that they call hydrophilic, something that likes water, can interact with water. Fats can't really interact with water. They avoid water. So it spontaneously will form this kind of membrane if you put a bunch of those little fat particles in there. So it's the same idea if you have some oil, right, and you dump it in water, it stays as a little bubble, right? It stays as a little clump of oil. It doesn't mix up. You can shake the crap out of the water with the oil, and it looks like it's all mixed up, and then you wait 5 minutes and it's all separated. Okay? That's that fat. It cannot dissolve in water. It cannot interact with water. It automatically, the little particles of fat join each other together. Okay? They stick together to avoid interacting with water. Same idea as this membrane. So the inner parts avoid the water, the outer parts interact with the environment, so the blue would be outside of the cell. And so if we're going to pretend like this was an amoeba in a pond, the blue would be the pond water, and then the brown is the cytoplasm of that cell. Okay? And then there's all kinds of stuff passing through this membrane so that we can shove proteins and other chemicals through, right, from the outside to the inside. Some stuff can go just straight through the membrane without going through some sort of channel. Right? In some cases, we have to let stuff in and let stuff out. Right? There has to be some way to monitor what goes in and out of a cell. Otherwise, it would just be crazy, haphazard, and nothing would work. Okay? So the whole outside of every one of our cells is made up of these little fatty phospholipids. Lipid just means fat. Okay. So that's what I just said. Okay. So hydrophobic means a fear of water. Hydro is water. Phobic is fear. Right? If you're arachnophobic, you're scared of spiders. If you're agoraphobic, you're scared of leaving your house. Right? If you have a phobia, that's a fear. Okay. So the cell membrane, the hydrophobic part, hides in the middle. And the hydrophilic, that's a water lover. Does anybody else know a word with philic or phile in it? What? Yes? How about pedophilic? Right? If you're a pedophile, what does that mean? You like kids. You're a creep. Right? Right? Ugh. Not liking kids in a good way, like, yay, I'm going to be a teacher. Like, you're a creep. Okay? So if you need to remember which is hydrophilic and hydrophobic, think of pedophiles. Right? And think of a phobia like, arachnophobia. Right? That was that, oh God, it was so long ago. You guys are way too young. Some movie about giant spiders attacking. It's horrible. But have you seen it? Late night TV. Yeah. Okay. Good job, guys. Okay, they call it a semi-permeable barrier. And the book goes into all this, and it goes through all these explanations, which is great. I'm not going to test you on super specifics. That just means shit can't just come in and out haphazardly, right? It allows some things to come in the cell and some things to not come into the cell, okay? Permeable just means lets water back and forth, essentially, right? So your raincoat should not be permeable. Should keep water out. So there's just another picture. So they're just telling us that the head of the little fatty molecule, the phospholipid, this little circle guy right here, these are hydrophilic because this is all water. The inside, the little tail guys are hydrophobic. And then the little head guys on the other side are hydrophilic so they can interact with the outside. So they really just sit. Right, they stick their tails together because they're hiding from water, and then out here on the outside, they can play with the water. Okay? So it makes a little raincoat for the cells that can then allow stuff to come in and out appropriately. See? See? See that? You like that? Yes? No. Okay. You're done with the membrane. It's enough of that. Semi-permeable whatever. Okay. So all cells have that cell membrane, whether it's prokaryotic or eukaryotic, plant, animal, bacteria, amoeba, fungus, all of them have a cell membrane. All of them also have ribosomes and DNA. Again, ribosomes are a complicated thing. They're the factory for building proteins. Okay. Proteins are what does almost all the jobs in your cells. So all the enzymes we talk about, So if you're thinking about your metabolism and you need to work out because you need to burn some more lipids, right, some fat, right, the enzymes that do that, that breaking down of sugar molecules or breaking down of fat molecules to make energy for the cell, those are all enzymes. Enzymes are all proteins, okay? So all cells have to have a factory to make proteins, and that's what the ribosome is. Protein synthesis, synthesis just means to make something, right, to make proteins. So whether you're a bacterial cell or a heart cell, you need to make proteins, okay? And DNA. DNA is my favorite molecule, as it turns out. I love it. It's my thing. It's what I do. Study DNA. Makes me happy. Okay. All living cells have DNA as their genetic material. What does that mean? That genetic material is the stuff that provides the instructions for what that cell is, what it does, how it works. Okay? So just like we were talking about when we made a hybrid organism that's half tiger and half lion, half the DNA was tiger, half the DNA was lion, right? And so what do you get? A hybrid liger? Tie-in? I don't know. Okay? And so it's neither a tiger nor a lion because it has DNA from both of those species. And so it's the instructions to build a combination, right? Not one or the other. Okay. And sometimes, if the instructions are really different from each other, both tigers and lions are big cats. They're closely related on the family tree, right? So you can get that hybrid to survive. Usually they don't reproduce, right? Remember, usually they're not fertile. But organisms that are not similar, very similar at all, don't even make a hybrid because there's not enough information to even build half of anything, right? You need the right combination of DNA to build whatever organism you're trying to build. Right? If you're making a human being, you have to have all human being DNA. Okay? In prokaryotes, the DNA is just floating around inside. Remember, it's just a little cell membrane bag with stuff in it. In eukaryotic cells, the bigger ones that are more complex, all multicellular organisms have eukaryotic cells. Prokaryotes are always single-celled organisms. Okay. The DNA is in something called a nucleus. It's another little bag inside the bigger bag. Right? It keeps it compartmentalized. Okay. So then here's our little picture. We just see, and the purple on this guy is the cell wall that I talked about, right? And most eukaryotic cells don't have a cell wall. If it's a plant cell, it does, but it's different than the bacteria. Okay. And the genetic material, they're just showing us in that blue. In bacteria, it's one circular chromosome. They have one, and it's in a circle. And in eukaryotic cells, the chromosomes are in the nucleus. The DNA is in the nucleus, and they're set up as linear chromosomes, right? People have 46 chromosomes. So we have 46 long, straight pieces of DNA. Okay? Remember, horses have 64, donkeys have 62. Or every species sort of has a number of chromosomes. Okay? And they're kept inside the nucleus. Oh, my God, it's time. What do we have here? No.
Cartman's cat's ass. Okay, that's it. Where you go? I'm going home.
Aw,
What a baby.
Cartman. You can't hear. What did he say?
We want to buy M80, the kind that fit in Cartman's cat's ass. Okay, that's it. Where you go? I'm going home. What a baby.
A baby. He's such a baby. All right, top hat people. live? Is it going? It's not showing up. Oh, no. You have it? Is it coming up? Is it giving you crap? What's going on? Yes? No? We good? Okay, what did I say? Tell me what I said. So we're looking for the thing that is not in both prokaryotes like bacteria and eukaryotes like our cells. What is the one thing that is not in both? Look for the not. Only in one of them, not in both of them. Oh my God. Let's all go outside. It's a little sweaty in here. Is it just me? Is it hot in there? Is it my hat?
Actually kind of cold.
Is it my hat keeping me warm? All right. Ugh. Plant sperm up my nose. Mm-hmm. Bless you. Who has plant sperm jammed up their nose? Oh, damn trees dumping pollen all over me. Are we all in? How are the textures? They just left. No. Hey, I forgot the new game we were going to play today. Who wants to play a new game? Okay. Okay, so this game is the yes-no game. It's very simple. Every time I say the word yes, you guys shout the word no!
No, yes.
And you can do vice versa. So when I say, everybody's done texting, yes?
No.
See? Isn't that fun? Just shout no in my face? Okay. Are we really done texting? Yes?
No.
Okay, we're moving on anyway. So there. All right, what the hell, people? Yay! That's our answer. What do we get? Woohoo! You guys are awesome. Except for those 16 people. Right? Okay, you 16 people out there, right? Cell membrane, all cells have. Okay, so don't forget. Oh, now there's only 15. Look at them learning. What's happening right here? That's learning centered right now. It's our mission right here at CSUN. Right? All cells have cell membranes. You will not get this wrong in the exam now, right? Because you got it wrong here. No?
Yes.
Okay. And everything that's alive has DNA. Okay, all cells. You guys are just getting smarter by the second. Okay. All right. Okay. Enough of that smartness. Enough of that learning. Should make that go away. Go away. Oh, it's probably not really gone. Okay. Go away. Go away. Oh my gosh, we're going to keep talking now. Oh, but maybe I should do this first. Okay. Oh, okay, this is going to be painful. Just warning you. Are you ready for some pain? Yes?
Wait, is it pain like that we have to be really pay attention?
No, it's pain like it's boring. Thank you. Oh, you guys are so good at this game. Okay, I'm going to have somebody yell in the microphone. So the thing about lecture capture is that it usually picks up me, but it doesn't pick up the audience. And so when you watch it, and then you assume like my jokes aren't funny, because you don't hear anybody laughing, and then it's just embarrassing to watch me up here and nobody's laughing, right? So I said I need them to put in like microphones to the audience so that it's not just like, just bombing up there the whole time. Still telling jokes and no one's laughing. Yes. That was no one. I guess it's no. That counts. Okay, that's good. I like it. All right, so we're just going to go through these. These you're just going to memorize, and we're not going to get all crazy about it, so I'm going to try not to torture you too much. Okay, so only the eukaryotes have organelles. Organelles are just the little bags inside the cell, like the nucleus is an example of an organelle. So they say the nucleus is the most important organelle because it houses the DNA and blah, blah, blah. But as it turns out, all the organelles are extremely important because if you're missing really any one of them, the cell's not going to function correctly. So we're going to talk about the name of the stupid organelle and what it does, what its function is. So that's what you have to match. Okay, and so it's likely that the exam questions will be lame about what some organelle does. Or, the following 4 categories we've matched organelle to function. Which one is not matched correctly? Right, so I'll tell you this one does this, and one of them will be messed up. Okay, so it's really just memorize this stuff. We'll end up talking a little bit about some of these organelles later in the class. And then you go, oh, yeah, I remember she talked about mitochondria. Well, who cares? And then you can throw around the names of this stuff, at cocktail parties and impress your friends. Because I know we all go to cocktail parties, right? Okay, so here's just an overview. Animal cell and plant cell, very similar. Almost all of the organelles inside are the same. Some of the differences include the cell wall. So here's a picture of our plant cell wall. Again, it's similar to a bacterial cell wall in what it's made out of, but not exactly. Okay? So antibiotics do not interfere with making this plant cell wall, right? But it does with bacterial cell walls, okay, by how they're made. The other thing that plant cells have are chloroplasts. Right? And we talked about this as plants being a producer, right? Absorbing light energy and turning it into sugar. That's what the chloroplast does. That's its job in a plant cell. Okay? It absorbs the energy from the sunlight and converts that into the chemical energy a cell needs, right? Which is sugar is the storage molecule of that. Okay, and then goes through all the rest of the things that are similar in the center, and we'll talk about each one of those puppies. Okay. Again, the nucleus holds the DNA. They love to call it the nuclear envelope. It's just a stupid membrane. It's just like, almost exactly like the outer cell membrane. It's a little bit different, but for you guys, we don't care. Okay? So you could think of it as the nuclear membrane. All of the organelles have that stupid phospholipid membrane. Okay, the stupid phospholipid bilayer with the little fatty tails facing in and the heads facing out to separate what's inside the organelle from the cytoplasm now in this case. Right, because all of these are inside a cell, so each of the organelles is a little bag in the goo. Right, and the organelle membrane separates what's inside the organelle from the cytoplasm goo outside of it. The nucleus happens to have 2 membranes. Who cares? The majors have to care because it really does matter, but again, that's their problem. Okay. So here's just a little picture and the description in the book. We're not going to go through all this crap. But here's the double membrane, and it has holes in it, just like the outer cell membrane, to let stuff in and out. Okay, and as we go through the class, we'll talk about what stuff needs to come out, what stuff needs to stay in. The DNA always stays in the nucleus. It's never allowed to leave. Okay, other stuff, proteins and all kinds of crap gets to come out and in and out. Okay, yes. Yes? No. The mitochondria, I love the mitochondria. Who doesn't love mitochondria? Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Mitochondria is our friend. It is the organelle that's in charge of converting sugar, right, that we eat, or we get from plants or whatever, into the energy our cells need to do all its work, which is called ATP. Okay, we'll talk about more about that energy process when we get to metabolism and all that kind of stuff, but it's all about your mitochondria providing you with the energy, you know, to move your arms and to think and to run up the stairs and so forth. Okay. The mitochondria has a double membrane, right? Here's its outer membrane. Again, it's that stupid phospholipid bilayer. And then the inner one is all twisted up in there to provide more surface area to do that energy conversion. Okay, so the mitochondria provides the power, the energy, the ATP for cells to do everything they need to do. Oh my gosh, it's the endoplasmic reticulum. Look at that stuff. It surrounds the nucleus, okay? It's pretty much where they call it the plumbing or the transport passages for proteins generally that need to go to other organelles or out of the cell. Okay? So an example of a protein that needs to get out of the cell would be an antibody molecule, which is made by our immune system. Okay? Those are made to fight bacteria and viruses. So if one of your white blood cells bumps into a bacteria, right, oh, hey, what the hell, you shouldn't be in here. It will start producing those proteins to kill bacteria. Okay? So we'll talk about transcription and translation. The proteins will be made. They'll be stuck into sort of this tunnel, right? And then they get passed out of the tunnel in a little vesicle, in a little fatty vesicle, right? And then sent through the Golgi, which we'll talk about in a minute, all the way to the plasma membrane. Since it's in a little sac of those fatty phospholipids, it can just merge with the cell membrane fats, because fats love each other, right? Just like the oil pieces coming together in water, right? And then it dumps that protein out of the cell, attaches to the bacteria, and causes the bacteria to explode. Well, kind of. Okay. So it's just a passageway for proteins to get out of the cell. Okay? It's riveting, I know. So that's endoplasmic reticulum. So if the immune system explodes the bacteria and then there's bacterial parts and guts hanging around, which is gross,
So you don't, like,
right?
eat it or split it out.
That's a good. So do you pee it out? Do you poop it out? What happens to that goo? What happens is other immune cells called macrophages come and eat it and recycle it, and then we get to use it as food. Yay! Nothing's wasted. But we'll talk more about how that works when we do the immune system too. Okay. Yeah. For transport of proteins outside the cell, that's what we'll call this. The Golgi helps the ER, takes little buds, vesicles, those are little sacs, little fatty sacs with proteins in it. It again merges with the next fatty sacs and then sends it with sort of a zip code of where it needs to go. Does this protein need to go to the nuclear membrane? Should I send it there and have it merge together? Does it need to go all the way out of the cell and dump outside? Okay, so it's just sort of the passage, the transport of proteins from the site of synthesis on a ribosome to outside of the cell or to another membrane. Okay, Remember, prokaryotes don't have any of this. They have a ribosome, it makes a protein, and that protein kind of just floats around until it bumps into wherever it needs to go, because there isn't any inner fatty tubules to do anything with. And so this is the whole picture of that. So we have proteins being made in the ribosomes that are attached to the ER. Those proteins are sent into a little budding vesicle right there. That merges with the Golgi, sticks the proteins in there. They might get modified. They're told where to go. They get a zip code. It's kind of like the postal service, right? This is the post office. The Golgi is, right? The ER is your own mailbox where you put the letter. And then the postman comes and picks it up, takes it to the post office, right? They figure out where it needs to go. And then these little vesicles are the other postman that delivers it to Grandma's house. Okay? So it's just a way of getting proteins to go where they need to go, right? Whether it's the cell membrane or to the nucleus or to the mitochondria. What if the mitochondria needs more enzymes to do its job? Well, the enzyme will be made, sent through the ER, sent through the Golgi, and then sent to the mitochondria. The two little fatty, bubbly guys will merge together, and then everything's great. And then you get to eat more donuts because you have more enzymes to burn all those donuts into ATP. To build muscle tissue.